For a long time, I personally wasn't a fan of Valby and her kit. I found a bubble bullet annoying to aim with how the terrain was made up in levels. Freyna received a buff and was a better damage over time character overall, and it just felt like outside of being needed for early door gluttony takedowns, she would just get relegated to outpost farming for golden reactors. Well, now though, I'm glad to be wrong about her, as after you get the tricks down behind the bullet, she can absolutely blow everything away in her path. She's one of the easier runs in Purge level 10 to farm those needed weapon cores. So in today's video, we'll be breaking down my crit build Valby, who's designed to litter the ground in as much moisture and just watch those ticks stack up. We've got modules, weaponry, Arche Tuning, and components all to come. As always, we've got a lot to cover, and if that sounds good to you, then let's get to it. Alright then, so for the newer players that have yet to build Valby, because I haven't actually done a Valby build on this channel, you might be wondering how we're able to pull off a crit build with a character that has a 5% crit rate at base, and that's in thanks due to Valby's red mod that's called Supply Moisture. And what this does is when you slot this in, it changes her passive from an MP recovery one to one that's more offensively geared, providing substantial boosts as long as we're considered to be on water. Now this water can be from the level itself, or it can be from our own abilities, because we will be applying that on the surface. Now attribute rate, firearm and explosive attack, as well as the base firearm critical hit rate increases are pretty nice, but nicer still are the buffs to skills with a crit rate increase of 20%, as well as a duration increase of 10%. Now what's important to note about these though is how they're additive boosts, meaning that they go to our base figure and they're affected by our future multipliers in the rest of the build, making Valby's new base crit rate of 25% when we're stood in water, and this is how we can easily boost that to 100%. Now with the red mod out the way, the main focuses we need to max out Valby's DPS will be cooldowns for ability spam, range, skill power and modifier to help her damage become that much higher, especially as a puddle damage has a fairly low modifier at base, and then lastly install a crit package to help our rate reach 100% along with the damage that our crits can do. So kicking things off, we're going to chuck in one of those HP mods. We're going to be keeping our Descendant alive while taking on that harder content. Now, while the component cores were a nice buff, and in some cases when it comes to other builds, it is more than enough to be able to actually supply you just from cores alone, in this case the setup we're going to be using isn't going to have a massive amount of base HP, meaning that we are going to need a little bit more help to be able to come tanky enough, so in that case we do need that HP mod. Now cooldown wise, the popular duo themselves make their return here. That is going to be Nimble Fingers along with MP Conversion, and these are going to massively cut down our skill cooldown times and help us be able to splash the place up to high heaven. Now range wise, we're only rocking the one mod due to module space, and that means that skill expansion is going to be carrying us hard here, at least until we get to that of the tuning section when we get to the rest of the video. Now this brings us to the crit and damage modules, the one section that makes or breaks how effective the build will fill in content. Now one constant we will want here is going to be that of focus on fusion, because this is giving us modifier towards our bubble bullet spam and also helps us with the cooldown in the process. Now damage wise, at base, power increase seems to be the worst module to slot in, as we don't have a way to be able to activate a second skill power bucket and benefit from its usual damage boost. Now this does all change once we get that major set to proc though, because with it being the heaviest hitter impact wise and the second best for damage over time. Now taking a look about how crits being factored in affect the damage, we can see that power increase does the most again by a large margin for impact damage, but it is getting beaten out by that of Fusion Master. So we do have this module here that is going to be helping us with base skill power as well as additional skill power modifier. Now because of how close these two are, with both having their pros and cons depending on obviously how you plan on using your build, for the first time ever in a build video I'm going to suggest both to you, and you can choose based off which of your playstyle. If you do hit your impacts every now and then, power increase is going to be that of your slot in, but if you're just relying on the damage over time to be able to mob for you, then Fusion Master is going to be the one that takes that section right there. Now crit package wise though, this might surprise you, as normally we would go with the trusty 4-piece package of Skill Insight, Skill Concentration, Frontlines and Emergency Measures, but this does overcap us on the crit rate when the full build is factored in, so we need to see which offers us the most damage when it comes to damage wise, the 27.7% crit damage on Emergency Measures, or the other lock module of that of Fusion and Integration. Now this gives us a 26.9% boost to our modifier as well as an additional 10% increase to our critical hit rate. Now with the testing, it ended up being very similar to the skill power modules, with measures being better at impact damage and integration being the go-to for damage over time. Now in this case, because the impact numbers were fairly close and the damage over times were higher when it comes to integration being around about 11.73% in some cases, I do think that Fusion Integration takes the final slot for the build, and this maxes out our DPS without compromising on crit rate. Now reactor-wise, we're going to be looking to spam Valby's skill 1 the most, with maybe an odd 1 or 2 follow-ups of a skill 4 should we need a little bit more of that DPS. Now due to this, we want to rock a non-attribute and fusion reactor, providing a nice boost to both of our 2 main skills. Now mounting-wise, we will want a scout rifle in here, which we'll cover a little bit more once we get to that weaponry section. While hand cannon is nice, it won't give us the 100% crit rate that we're after, and so another stat stick is going to take centre stage this case. Now rolls wise, the best in slot I've found is cooldown and crit damage, as this allows us to be able to help spam away while being able to still land those heavy hits. Now as for components, Valby's a non-attribute descendant, so it's never going to be in a doubt that it would be anything other than a 4-piece off the Mage's set. Not only are we getting a nice base 6% increase to our main skill power bucket, but once we've cast 3 skills, we're going to get a huge non-attribute skill power bucket injection, which is why power increase and singular master are as strong as they are when it comes to the DPS, as you've seen. And while there will be a few seconds of downtime between the buckets being active as it can't be refreshed, the cooldown that we have means we're able to have a lot of uptime with this, and we can reliably use this inside of activities. Cause wise, it is just the standard of HP and defense, and that allows you to be able to keep yourself on the feet, and it should be all that you need. Now we're on to the weaponry side of things, and this build will revolve heavily around one weapon only, so feel free to fill the other slots with whatever you feel like. Now Blue Beetle is going to be that of our stat stick of choice, packing one of the crazier abilities for stat sticks, at least when it comes to crit based descendants, granting a 115% crit rate boost on a fusion skill cast. Now with this being multiplicative and our supply moisture giving us 25% base crit rate when on water, this provides a whopping 28.75% additional rate when we cast our bubble bullet, hence why our module choices still give us that 100% crit rate. Now with this being a stat stick though, build wise it's not going to matter too much. Ideally we're going to be slotting in modules that will be passively boosting us a little bit further. Now as scout rifles don't have access to brisk walk, we'll opt to slot in things like defense master and tactical change, both offering increases to our defense. Now other modules though will be your standard firearm attacks, your crit modules and your weak point, but you don't tend to fire this gun, so save your cats for other weapons if you prefer. Now tuning is where the magic happens, as with this build being a skill based one, of course we're going to be wanting to focus on the right side of the board for more damage, crit rate and cooldowns. Now by foregoing the yellow skill power boost, we can instead grab the last of our crit rate boost and damage by fearing off from the cooldown node. With skill costs and range buffs helping our expansion module from earlier, we can reliably cast our abilities more often and cover more ground when doing so. Now mutant cell wise, as this is a mobbing build, we're going to be picking up that of non-attribute cohesion, giving us even more non-attribute skill power, but this also doubles up its usefulness when our mage's passive is down, as this works as the second bucket when we want to wait for our third cast to trigger it back active. Essentially this cell mitigates any DPS downtime that we kind of have, meaning that we should never have to worry about the buckets or anything like that, or being low on DPS like we did with the tables earlier, and it means that power increase is always going to have something to be able to work off when it comes to a second bucket. Now with the reinforcement, we're just looking to boost up what Valby can already do, and then just push it that little bit extra. Now by grabbing Arche Circulation, this helps with hitting that cooldown cap, meaning even more bubble spam and water everywhere. Now while our cooldowns are already pretty good, it means for a set amount of time we'll have even more DPS to chuck down. Now Selective Neuro is going to be working on the side to keep our skills ready to go, with more MP top-ups alongside that of the blue balls that will be dropping from enemies. And then lastly, depending on what you're requiring for your playstyle, you can mix in one of 2 nodes. Adrenaline Rush takes my choice, boosting our movement speed for 10 seconds as we mob, allowing us to be able to get some decent clear times. Alternatively, you can go for Biodensity Augmentation to up your HP should you need a top-up when it comes to your health pool. And with all that out of the way, that wraps it up for my meta Valby set. As it currently stands, while Valby isn't up there as one of the fastest mobbers due to how her skills behave, she definitely has more than enough backing up her skills to dish out that hurt. She feels more than comfortable handling Purge and Sigma Sector, and I'm expecting her to be a few people's go-to when Axiom drops. And so this is the section I want to hear from you. What are your current thoughts on Valby? Do you prefer to rock a crit or non-crit? And lastly, will you be hitting Season 3 when it drops next month? Let me know all that and more down below. A massive thank you for making your way to the end of the video. As I always say, keep yourself safe, keep yourselves well, and I'll see you all on the next video.